Can everyone hear me here?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, great. Okay, so let's get started. It's 2 past the hour. Let's start. Frank, welcome, and let's kick off with you first.
Okay, folks, first of all, welcome again to everybody who joined us yesterday. It was fantastic yesterday, and I know it's going to be even more fantastic today because what a wonderful day of track and field we've just enjoyed. First of all, my name is Frank Dick. Some of you, I hope most of you know who I am. If not, currently the president of European Athletics Coaches Association, who are organizing what we have today. And also the president of, and also the chair of the Global Athletics Coaching Academy. Now, just in case you don't know what that is, Sebastian Coe, the president of World Athletics, asked me if I would pull together a body representative of the coaching community, which is point one. Point two, that would address all matters to do with athletics coaching worldwide, point, which is the second point, and the third point, and to facilitate necessary change. And I know that everybody on this, certainly amongst my panelists, have been looking forward to some kind of changes in the future and how we can, if you like, have a renaissance of coaching worldwide in track and field. And that's what we're about. So that's GACA. What they rely on, what GAC relies on for its coaching community are the coaches associations. EACA, the European one, many of you on this call are members of already. There's also NACATCA, the North American, Caribbean, and Central American Track and Field Coaches Association. There is also the South American Coaches Association, ASEA. Oceania has just re-established itself, so they're up and running. And also Asia, 5 of the regions of Asia we've already started to move forward with. The 6th is about to join in, and very shortly we will have a new Asia Coaches Association. So what have they got to do with anything? Well, when it comes to the crunch, it'll be the associations who relate to the coaches and to make who facilitate the changes for them at area and at local level. One of the ideas that GACA had was to have a World Athletics Coaches Club every time we have a World Athletics Coaches Championship. And as from 2025, World Athletics has agreed that any country who wishes to host a World Championships must have an on-site coaches club, a place where coaches can network, meet together, and learn in real time. But in this era that we're in, folks, we suddenly realized that it's not just being in one place that will help us educate and learn from each other. We can learn from all around the world in a virtual climate. And that brought the idea that during the Olympic Games, why don't we try out the idea of each area having its own area coaches club, its virtual coaches club. And that is what this is all about. In order for it to happen, Giacomo, I'm delighted to say, stepped up to the plate. And whereas the other associations maybe have 3 or 2 coaches club events, we have one every day. Giacomo, my congratulations and my thanks to you for doing that. Also stepping up to the plate is our host here today and throughout the week, Jimson Lee. Most of you will know him for his own world-class webinars and for the incredible sprints coaching community that he has established. So just before introducing Jimson, can I thank all of you panelists who are on here for joining. I'm really grateful for that. We've got a fantastic team here, and we need that because we've got a fantastic day to analyze. Jimson, over to you, my friend.
Wow, thanks, Brian. Thanks for the intro, and thank you to all the panelists who are attending right now. We have 9 different panelists, so instead of me going through all 9 now, introducing everybody, let's do it one by one as we go into each event. As you know, today was a really fantastic day in track and field. So let's start with the 100 meters. The blue ribbon event. And first, I'll start with Christine Harrison-Bloomfield. Christine, welcome and thank you for joining. You're on mute.
Hi. Hello.
Right. Yeah, thanks for joining. So Christine is a former Great Britain national team athlete, and she's now a high performance sprints coach who has worked with Olympic gold medalist Christine Ohurugu. So Christine, I mean, the 100 meters tonight, first Olympics, the last 3 Olympics without Usain Bolt. We saw an Italian win. We saw people who should have made the final, did not make the final. We had a guy who ran superb time in the semis and came in 6th. Maybe some of your thoughts about the men's race today, and maybe talk about the women's race last night.
Okay, the men's race for me was quite interesting because I'd spoken to John Herbert, who's a long jump coach, and he predicted this was going to happen. This guy was going to run super quick, because of his speed and his plyometrics and his ability to transition out. What he doesn't do, which is what a lot of sprinters have done in the past, is drive for a long period of time. But his backhand and his maximum velocity mechanics were incredible towards the end. And I think that's what gave him the advantage over the other participants. And I also think that he had a belief in himself, and people didn't expect him to do what he did, and people didn't, he had no pressure on him. I think the Chinese guy put a lot of pressure on himself from the semi-finals, and he celebrated a lot. And I think that takes away a lot of your energy that you need for the final. And I think if you look at the ones that won, especially in the women's races, none of them celebrated. It was just a matter of fact, we've done this, we move on. And I think so that's what I felt about the men's 100. And the American guy, he did really well, but Curly, I don't think he relaxed enough in his mid part of his race. I think his acceleration was good, but Lamont, his backhand was incredible, and he didn't break down, which I think a lot of the other athletes tensed up in the upper torsos. They weren't driving their arms, and Lamont just carried it through the whole race. You're seeing a change in the way people are running hundreds, because the back end of everybody's looking at the back end. I don't know if that's because of Usain and what Usain has done over the past years, but you look at the acceleration. Curly, what Curly did is he broke his acceleration in his transition from his dry phase to his maximum velocity. You saw his head jolt backwards, and I think that did cost, personally, I think that did cost him in the race. But everybody, women and men, the back end of their races are phenomenal. And the maximum velocity mechanics are incredible, but they're also sustaining. And what Elaine Thompson did is she sustained her pace for a lot longer than everybody else. Everybody else decelerated. She just maintained her pace for a lot longer. If you look at the breakdown on the BBC website, you could see that her pace continued, and that's why she was able to do what she did.
No, that's great insight. Thank you for sharing. Just for those who are curious, and for those who belong to the EACA website, back in May, we had the fortunate chance of actually interviewing his coach, and that's Paolo Tomasi, along with Laurent Mouly of the Holland and Swiss team. So if you haven't had a chance, please go to the website and check that interview. Very helpful. So I think the next thing I want to ask, one more question to Christine, is the UK team unfortunately had a false start in the semifinal as well as the final. Do you know anything about what's going on in their mindset? How do you false start? Why the same country with 2 athletes false starting in the Olympics?
I think it's about discipline, and I think everybody put such an emphasis on the start. If you're not good at the start, a lot of people, because you saw Usain when Usain full started in the World Championships, a lot of people put a lot of pressure on the starts, and so they're trying to anticipate the gun and go on the beat of the bang rather than, be patient and be disciplined. And it's all about discipline. And I think the 2 guys, they full started for different reasons. One, he hasn't run for nearly 2 years, and he found it really. I think he found that the whole environment probably very difficult. It's not that he's not disciplined; it's just that he hasn't been in that environment for a long time. I'm not really sure why Zainal full started. I think he was just. You can see that he was just trying to anticipate the gun. And obviously being with Usain and Usain not having good starts, they probably work on that a lot, and the emphasis is on that. And I think sometimes you need to work on your flaws, but you also need to maintain, because if you looked at him in the semi-finals, he came through phenomenally well. And I think he would have done that in the final had he had the opportunity to run. So I think not to put so much pressure on themselves. I think they probably put so much pressure on themselves at the start, and everybody said, you've got to get out, otherwise you won't get a medal, that they emphasize the start. That's what I think from the two Brits that I know. And I see Reece training every day, and his starts have improved. But I think there was too much emphasis placed on that. And, you know, you have to think about what you're good at, and then you can work on the starts, but keep on working on what you're good at, and then developing that thing that you're weak at. So everything will move along at the same rate.
Okay, great. Anyone has questions for Christine or about the men's 100? Frank.
Yeah. Hi, Christine. I'm afraid I'm to the right of Genghis Khan when it comes to discipline in any kind of sport, okay? And I don't get it. I think a false start is absolutely inexcusable, especially when you know the consequences. And you can't anticipate. You just can't anticipate. And you can't go in with a mindset like that. You have the discipline, you learn that way. And what I couldn't understand is, as far as I can work out, Darnell did something very similar in the national championships.
Yeah, yes, he did, and he got disqualified. So he actually didn't qualify by right. They selected him subsequently. So they all know, but I think people, you know, when you're in the warm-up area, you watch everybody else and how they perform, and maybe that had an impact on the way he performed. But it is about discipline. It is about the coaches. Some coaches have consequences for false starts in their training sessions, and some coaches don't make them disciplined. So I think it's about them going back and going to the drawing board and saying, like, we have to make sure that we hold our positions and we're ready to go when the gun goes, and not to anticipate it. So personally, I think it's appalling. However, I'm not in that Olympic final, or I'm not in that semi-final wanting to get to the final. So I think Zarnell, it was a silly mistake, really, really silly mistake.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Frank, me? Yeah, well, I heard him do an interview, Zarnell, and he claimed that he had cramp. He said he had cramp coming out blocks, and he felt a twitch and he came out. But when I look back at it, I'm thinking, you had cramp, but you had a great technique and you didn't limp off. And that's what he said. But as everyone knows, everybody prepares for major championships. You've got your plan, you have to execute your plan, but your plan is to execute under pressure. So each individual know what's required of them by the prelims and seeing what they have to do. And it's very hard when you know you're gonna get out, but it's really having experienced people around you that knows what pressure and how to handle that. And at that level, you have to be honest with yourself. Everybody can talk about transitions and what you're doing, but it's who gets into their flow quick and more relaxed, execute that race. And you see, unless some people have got that patience to catch or to execute that phase and you know, pick up and be victorious at the end. I mean, we're talking about it like it's easy. Training is training. Competition is totally different. And you need to have that mindset, you need to have that experience, and you need to execute under pressure. So when I used to train, obviously I trained with the likes of Colin Jackson and Lincoln Christie, and that's what they worked on. So the key was actually to try and bring training as close as you can as possible. Going into training with that right mindset, like this is competition, everybody getting ready. And this is what you need to do. And if it means that you have to bring someone else in your group, that you bounce off one another, that you get that quality of training. You know, nothing's gonna be as close of, let's say, actually doing it. But remember, when it comes to that time, the things that are easy is not easy.
No, absolutely. And just as a side note, the last time Europe won a gold medal in the 100 meters was Linford Christie, and that was back in '92. So yeah, this is a good thing for Europe in general to have a gold medal. I think we're kind of tired of having the Americans and Jamaicans dominated. So let's move on here. I think I want to talk about triple jump next, and I want to introduce the next panelist, and that's Peter Stanley. So Peter Stanley, welcome. So Peter is an internationally acclaimed triple jump coach, to world record holder Dalton Edwards. He headed Team GB athletics, track and field, and the combined events, and the development of high performance coach and athlete partnerships. So Peter, welcome to tonight's webinar or show.
Evening, everybody.
Okay, so I think the question I have for Peter is two things. Women's triple jump. We saw a world record. Can you talk about that? And also her last jump, her step phase was so short, but it was so close to the pit. Do you think we need to start moving that board back for her or for any future? Give me your thoughts about the triple jump tonight.
I would certainly agree with you. Certainly 2-3 of the athletes were coming dangerously close to the end of the pit. So possibly, introduce another meter out from the board or use the men's board. There are obviously some very good hoppers and steppers involved in there. I was intrigued by the flatness of the step. It's something I've always sort of thought about. One of the things that I think we have a big problem with, or women had a big problem with, as they developed through triple jump, is they were tended to be, certainly initially, if we go back to the Anessa Cravat's sort of era, ex-long jumpers or long jumpers who were going to try triple jump, so they tended to lift a little bit too much. And obviously one of the major problems then is you come in to land at a steeper angle. So I was quite intrigued about how flat Rojas actually went through her step. Most unusual, but what I did like was the evenness of the phases. So it's obviously something they've been working on, and it really worked for her, no doubt about it at all.
Right, and why 26 years between world records? I mean, it's kind of nice to see the world records fall. People love to see world records. Why does it took so long? I mean, is it not popular, or is there an elephant in the room that we don't want to talk about back in '95? What are your thoughts on that?
Nothing's ever proven. So as far as I'm concerned, it was just a tremendous record to hit. I didn't hear anybody voicing any negative opinions about Jonathan Edwards' record in the same year. So, it was just one of those wonderful years, I think, for triple jump. I do think it's one of the forgotten events. It is very technical. It is very, very difficult. It really challenges coordination. So I think there is an awful lot of that. It is a Cinderella event, I suppose. But 25 or 26 years, I think the record is third. It was time it went. Don't tell Jonathan I said that, because he's very protective of his world record and is stood for the similar amount of time.
Oh, great. I also want to chime in another one of our panelists, Dani Cornelius, South Africa. Dani is part and head of the Tux Athletics at the University of Pretoria and high performance coach in the long and triple jump. He is now a manager of athletics South Africa Relays program. Dani, so triple jump. What are your thoughts on the women's triple jump tonight?
Well, I was really amazed by the level of triple jump. It was really incredible. And if you look at the performances, it was an amazing thing to watch. There was just one thing I was sorry, and that was I was not there to watch it. I think it would have been an amazing thing to see it. But Rojas has got what Peter also said, she's got an amazing, I think the speed that she also runs up, and she's very tall. I think that's one of her benefits, the fact that she's very, very tall. And I think one of these days she's going to step into the pit, which will mean that they will have to move it back to the 13 meters. And I can't see why they can't just jump from the 13 meters. If you can't jump 13 meters, why do you participate in an international event? I think that's going to be one of the standards that they're going to. It's like when Uwe went through the 104 meters in the javelin, they knew they had to do something about the javelin. I think she's going to do something about the triple jump. And if she can get her phases, especially the step, if she can get that sorted out, she's going to step into the pit, and that means that they will have to move it back. But what also actually is amazing, what I really found very fascinating, was the fact that everybody. The second, the third, and the fourth athlete, they stepped more or less in the same area. And then, but she's got an amazing last jump. I mean, and I think also hop. I think she hops run about 650. I'm pretty sure it's an amazing hop that she hops. And they all step around about 10 meters, hop and step around about 10 meters. And then she's got that amazing last jump again that just puts her above the rest. And she had a few no jumps in the past in the other meetings as well. but I knew it was to come. And I think she can jump 16. I've got no doubt in my mind. Just a thing that really, I was a little bit disappointed today in Lafont. Lafont jumped a 1460 yesterday, and she was second. And today she only managed a 1257. And I think she had a problem with the run-up. I think maybe last night the moment was too big for her, a national record and a PB for her, and a 1460. And I think that was a little bit too much for her, but I was really impressed. But another girl that impressed me today was also the Portuguese lady, Mamona. I think jumping a 1501, a national record as well. I think she's got a lot of talent as well. And I think our triple jump ladies, the standard was very, very high. And up to the last round, there was 3 or 4 of them, or there's about 5 of them that could easily get a medal. The gold medal was cast in stone. That was Rojas. Nobody could beat her. But for second and third, anyone could have come up and they could have done that. But well done. I think it's exciting times to see that happening.
I agree with you. Sorry, can I just come in? I agree entirely with that. So some of my notes were about Rojas was rangy, rhythmic. I was quite impressed by the short steps as she came into the board. Now, I don't know whether that's because she had what I'll call a momentum start to her approach run, and she was actually running out of room, or it was a planned shortening of steps. But certainly very, very aggressive. Her accuracy was good, so I'm assuming it was all planned. But I think the thing that really struck me was the energy distribution across the 3 phases. Just the way she was able to work both arms and legs and keep a nice upright and erect posture. So it was really great to see. And I think the women are jumping more like the men used to do jump. There's a change, and it's just a total development now through triple jump for females. It's changed a great deal over the last 25 years.
That's great. I just uploaded on the chat some stats from Randy Huntington, all the stats, all the different phases and ratios. So maybe you can take a look at that later, and we'll get back to this later for discussion. It's quite a very intriguing piece of statistics. I want to move on to high jump next. So high jump, I'm also going to be introducing. We have 2 panelists tonight. One was here yesterday, but we have Wolfgang Ritzdorff from Germany. He's the world leading authority in high performance, high jump coaching and performance. He's also the director of top international high jump and pole vault conference in Köln. So Wolfgang, welcome. Can you unmute yourself? And
yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Jimson. Thank you for inviting me. You can hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, loud and clear. So, okay, men's high jump, two gold medals tied. Happy for Italy, happy for Qatar. What are your thoughts on the men's high jump?
Yeah, let me give you 2 answers, one as a spectator and one as a coach. So the spectator's answer is, this is the first time in history that we have 2 gold medals. Okay, this is because of a change in the rule. We had it once indoors in the women's high jump, but in an Olympics and in the World Championships, men, we never had 2 gold medals. And it was an exciting result, and it's a very personal comment. I would say I'm happy for the 2 who made it for good reason, because Barshim, he was the dominating high jumper of the last decade, never taking an Olympic gold. He was a world champion, a silver medalist in the Olympics, a bronze medalist in the Olympics, and definitely, finally, he deserved to win an Olympic gold medal. It's similar for Tamberi. Definitely, he was one of the favorites in Rio before he took this incredible injury a couple of weeks before the Rio Olympics. And it was a very tough way back for the both of them. Both of them took a very similar, very serious injury, and happy to have them back. And so personally, I'm happy with that one. The second observation as a spectator is, I think, maybe Dalton can correct me, but I think it's the first time in history that 10 jumpers cleared 230. I think we never had this before. 10th place with a 230 clearance. This is not in London. In the 2017 World Champs with 229, you took the bronze medal. and now 10 jumpers over 230. I think this is outstanding. And the number 3 observation as a spectator is, and this is specific for the high jump, you always have 1 or 2 guys who are in the flow that day. So this young guy from South Korea coming with a 230 PB and clearing 235 in the Olympic final, this is fascinating, this is outstanding, and all of us were excited. Usually we have this in the qualifying rounds, that someone is out of reach for that day, but today we could observe it in the final. As a coach, I would say from a technical aspect, we saw the whole variation of very speedy people like Tamberi and Stark from Australia, and also the Japanese Tobe, the high jumper, extremely fast. Then we saw the whole range, also quite slow run-ups from the New Zealander, and we saw how to say it a little bit. Okay, all of those athletes I mentioned, they are within a certain, I don't know the English term, maybe guardrails. So you are within certain barriers, within certain limits. Maybe you're a little bit more to the left, or you are a little bit more to the right. But, okay, how to say it, not too unpolite. As quite often, the American high jumpers leave the guardrails to both ends. So what we see in a technical aspect from these players is not a variation of the high jump technique. It's something very, very specific, especially in Harrison. There is a lot of potential left. This is the technical aspect, and the last sentence, and if you want, we can discuss later. The second is the planning aspect. And this gives me a little bit of a headache, because if I check the medalists, what they did in the season, Barshim had 4 competitions before it came to the Olympics. Tamberi had 6. Both of them took a very small number of competitions before and had the chance to specifically prepare. Others who had to fight due to this crazy ranking system till the very last minute to make it to the Olympics, most of them failed in the qualifying. And it was a totally different way of preparing the Olympics. And maybe this is something we have to reconsider for the future. But at the end, those who took the medals, definitely they deserve it, and they are at the top of our event.
No, absolutely. I want to get Dalton Grant to speak on this. So he was on yesterday's panel, so those who missed it. So Dalton is a former European indoor high jump with the PR of 237 meters, which was ironically the winning jump tonight. Dalton is now a high performance coach in surface sports and technical aspects of applying power to achieve vertical lift. So Dalton, welcome back again. What are your thoughts on?
Thank you. I was so excited by the performance, 5 season bests, 2 national records. And like I said, 10th position was by, I think, Kerry from New Zealand, who jumped 230. So what I love about the high jump is like art, is who master your craft. So when I was jumping, you had Sotomayor, Hollis Conway, all these different variations of styles and technique. And it was who knows themselves the best. And this is what I would say, if you know how you feel when you're ready to jump high, you know how much training session you need to do. As I said before yesterday, I've come in at a major championship and started at 232 and nailed it my first attempt. Now, that strategy was purely just because I was carrying an injury. So what I see with these jumpers now, I believe that, you know, with Tamari and Barzin, they know themselves very well. They know that they can come out and jump high. My highest start in a season is 2 meters 34 on my first competition. So that's when you know yourself. So once you know how to warm up yourself, properly and get yourself mentally ready, because my program was 2 weeks, always, I visualize. I saw the perfect jump. As I was going doing my drills and working towards that, I made sure in training that I was executing the right technique, that I can feel it. The jump has to feel it. When I went into competition, I was not searching for that technique. I was jumping that perfect jump, what I was going over mentally. Because when it's time to perform, it's time to do. So you have to come out of that comfort zone, that energy, and you have to control it and use it. And that's what a lot of elite athletes execute the difference. It's the mindset. And what I like there, you can see, I reckon Barzin was capable of jumping 240. But I think when it came that close, you saw him pushing a bit too hard at 2.39 meters. You know, his last attempt was very close. Both of them was quite close, but you know, this was what I love, my event and the pandemic and what they were going through. It just was a technical event and high jump, you know, it's not you going together, it's one goes and then you got to respond to that. So I'm proud of the way they handled themselves in the Olympics. And it was very exciting. And with Harrison, I did quote that I thought he would have get a medal. I think his knee was giving him a problem, because if you watch the way he was jumping before, he had a very consistent, he's got a bit of a Sotomayor, Javier, and a bit of my hips, the way he double pumps it up in the air and gets over the bar. And his run up wasn't consistent. But at least what I liked about him, that he was going to get a medal, because he had some pass, and I think he did attempt to 239 as well. So, I mean, it was a great competition, you know, a great competition.
No, absolutely. I want to move on to 800 meters, and Peter Eriksson can join in. But Michael, did you have a quick question for either Wolfgang or Dalton, or your comments were in the chat?
I had some comments, actually. So I know definitely, as Coach Wolfgang was mentioning, one of the main things definitely when you're looking at the different ways that a lot of jumpers go through a season, and I always see when I'm coaching athletes, you have some athletes really can handle and really get in shape and get primed going through 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 or more meets per year. While some athletes really need to stay in practice and just only have a handful of meets a year, where they have 2 or 3 meets prior to going to a championships, where they don't have to have a lot of time competing, and they can do well with just fairly little actual competition. And it kind of saves their body from the standpoint of the muscle recruitment you have to have, as well as the stress and strain on the tendons and ligaments. So that's something that's very interesting to see moving forward with the ranking system, if there can be some improvement there to help some of the athletes that may need to have some more rest and not as many meets. If there can be some modifications to where those athletes are not going to be burnt out and they can perform at a higher level during the Olympics. There's going to be any kind of modifications or any kind of plans to further improve and modify the world rankings moving forward so the athletes to qualify for the Olympics?
Yeah. Wolfgang or Dalton, a quick answer to that before we move to 800 meters?
I mean, it's very hard to do that, because I think the circumstances is just that you have to go out and prepare your best, because let's be honest, you know, New Zealand, Australia, you know, Japan, different time zone. So what do? That's why I said beforehand, how I prepared by, you know, when I knew I had the Commonwealth Games in 1990, to start 2 weeks beforehand and start training at night. So I think it's one of those things that you've got to know your body. And I was an athlete that prepared myself, that I was ready to battle at any time, needed to. And, you know, I had to be at peace with myself. And I think that's what it takes to be a professional. A professional is a professional. Rules are there, and you have to abide by the rules and just compete to the best of your ability. That's what you can do.
Great, thanks.
Because if you change it, it's going to affect someone. So you can't please everyone.
No, absolutely. Okay, next topic, 800 meters. So Peter Eriksson, welcome. So Peter, for those who don't know, is a former Great Britain head coach, most successful Paralympic team and Canadian Olympic athletics team. Now he's with Canada's Own the Podium program. So Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
So we had a question about 800 meters. You know, the first round from Alan Risberg wrote in the comments, first round, 143. What's going on with 800 meters? Do you think it was a result of the lack of competitions going on? Or
yeah, I think it's depending on where you're coming from during this pandemic period too, because if you look at the Canadians in many sports, by the way, not the athletics, they have had very limited opportunities for competitions throughout the year that we have been in a lockdown. So if I look at Arab, who I think is a phenomenal runner and probably will do even better in the future, it shows that he could control, you know, the heats from the front in the beginning, but to the end. But then when you come to the semifinals or the finals, it's going to be tougher to be able to pull it off that way. And I think that shows that lack of competition that you have and experience that you have. And I've seen that in other Canadian 800 meter runners as well. When they are in the early stages of major events, they really hold it from the front and try to keep it up the whole time and do quite well. And then semifinals is a totally different story because everybody know what you're going to do and they sit behind and wait for you to run out of steam or wait for their own sprint in the end of the day. So it's hard to say. I mean, it's all depending on in the heats what you're up against. And it's easy, you get more relaxed in the heats than when you come to the semifinals. Then it's only 2 that goes to the next round and it's tougher. And then the same thing in the final, right? You saw that on 100 meters too. People are tightening up because they know the pressure is on. So that's just a general reflection of the 800 meters. But again, you could see it even in the Americans' performance in general. They could probably, and hopefully they perform better as times go by, but it also shows the lack of competitions and travel to meet international competitors during this pandemic period.
That's great. We got a question from one of the panelists, Gunter Lange from Germany. So he's a world leader in endurance events, coaching, and high performance strategic planning. And now he's a Ugandan special presidential assistant in education sport. Welcome back, Gunter. I got your name right this time. What are your comments?
Yes.
Comments on.
Yeah. Jimson, you're improving dramatically in German language. Thanks for that. Peter, when I saw the heats and also the semifinal today, so this dramatic incident in between Jared USA and Botswana Amos, which I luckily then saw that the referee advanced him to the next round by decision, so he will be in the final as being one of the top 800 meter athletes. But I linked it to the 2 athletes who, in the real sense of the word, fall out from the heats. And in both cases, it was our friends from the refugee camp. I think we should not take it like that. We should think about it and think it in the sense that we also have a responsibility to protect our athletes. I believe strongly that we should consider that the refugee camp, if they not have a proven level to be able to compete in this kind of competition. I had the impression that you cannot bring a normal Volkswagen to a Formula One race and then you are surprised that then you cannot react. Especially our first refugee did a simple beginner mistake. He crossed and was then really shot out. I was happy that nobody was injured, and I was also happy that they did not cause injury. So maybe in the future we should exclude them unless they have proven that they are able from the skill level to cope with the high pace and the quick changes in coordination and positioning. There are other events in track and field which are less risky, and don't misunderstand me. I welcome them. I love the idea of inclusion, but we should also consider the safety of our refugee camp athletes and our athletes when it comes to this high pace changes in coordination, and then we see athletes all over the track. I like the 800 meters. I look forward to the finals, but looking at it, I miss Rudisha. So his London Olympic world record is for me still now by far the best race. So when I saw the heats and I saw this fantastic performance, my thinking was, okay, if Rudisha can in a final run from the front, a world record, another top athlete can also in the heats do a fantastic race. So I think we are on a good way. I don't see anybody of them replacing Rudisha, but let's see. I look forward to the finals.
Yeah, and speaking of finals, Nigel Amos, Botswana, he got tripped in the third heat, and he actually got reinstated for the final. Do you agree with that, or not agree with that?
I mentioned this in the beginning that I was happy about it. I think it is a decision in the interest of the sport, because when you have one of the fastest competitors being without causing it removed, I think he finished in 2:38 or something like that. We should not think that this is unfair. He finished in 2:38 and he has a 1:42.9. I believe strongly that this was a decision in the interest of sport, and I look forward to seeing him in the finals.
Okay, so let's talk about the last two events, which is the 100-meter hurdles women's and the 400-meter hurdles men's. I want to call on Rita Engelbrecht again. She was here last night. So for those who don't know Rita, she's the world authority on high performance in hurdles, both hurdles, technique and preparation. And she's formerly South Africa head hurdles coach and now coach to Olympic hurdles and mentor to Olympic and world hurdlers. So welcome back, Rita. I want to hear your thoughts on the women's 100-meter hurdles. Will it take a world record to win a gold medal tomorrow? We have three ladies who probably can run sub 12:40, 12:03 something. What are your thoughts on that, on the semis, and looking forward to the final?
I think that, thank you for the opportunity. I would like to discuss the hurdles, and then if you don't mind, I would like to come back to just referring in short to a discussion we had last night. First of all, I think that in the semis, that 12:26 Olympic record is definitely, I think, going to be a world record in the final. Jasmine is strong. She's running confident. She is there. But I have to say that Kendra Harrison ran much better already in the semis than in the heats. And I don't know, I've always read about her because she reminds me of a butterfly that flies from one flower to another, the way she flies over the hurdles. She touches so lightly on everything. She's not a strong, heavy runner, like, for example, Jasmine. And, you know, she's obviously, she's got the world record, but she doesn't like the attention being on her all the time. I think that is why maybe subconsciously she does take a easier approach, not to appear to be the main favorite and under that pressure for the final. That's her type of personality. After her world record, she didn't even qualify for the Olympics because she said she couldn't handle all the attention and the photographs and the media and whatever, and she fell apart nearly because of that. So I would never write her off. She is a brilliant athlete. She's a butterfly over the hurdles. She is fantastic. But that Olympic record of 12:26, I think it's going to be a very good time in the final. So I think Henderson most probably silver, but I would like to see her maybe come back as a world record holder and a champion, but she's going to need to do a lot before she beats that goal. In the men's 400 hurdles, I think the heats between the Norwegian and the American Benjamin was a cat and mouse, but I also like the fact that Karsten made sure that he did put him on the line. Even if they both were relaxing, he made sure that, look, I am still the boss, I am the world record holder, and I can also accelerate and go through. I must say, I must admit, I was surprised that Benjamin started much faster than what he normally did, and even in the world championships, he did start much faster, but he also had the advantage of being in the inside of Warom, but he likes lane 7, so I don't know. We'll see what happens in the final. The rest, I think Dos Santos looks very light on his feet. 6 guys, 47, below 48, just like all the other events, amazing. So I wouldn't, Benjamin looks fantastic, he looks strong. Dos Santos, a lot of other guys, but I think most probably Samba, I'm not putting my mind, he looks heavy. For me, as a hurdles coach, he runs into the ground, he's not gliding over like he used to be. So that is as far as the hurdles is concerned. I would like to mention 2 observations from the side, maybe in all sports, but specifically in track and field athletics as well, that we're going into, it looks like a new era of tall athletes doing their thing. In the women, we see it in the tennis, we see Zverev, we see Medvedev, we see all these tall athletes coming through, and they are performing extremely well. So I think that we are going to see this, we see this in the triple jump, of course, the 6'4", 190 for women. That is, you cannot compete if you give the same frequency and that stride length is that much longer. It is an advantage that you are born with. And I think coaching is going to develop differently around those tall athletes, accommodating techniques slightly differently over the hurdles as well. And yes, we'll see what happens with that. Just an observation as far as that is concerned. Then my last philosophical observation is that yesterday we spoke about the influence of the virus and lockdown and athletes, but if I look at the fantastic results, so many people over 230 in the high jump, so many women doing fantastic in the long jump, so many guys fantastic in the hurdles, all these best time and the 100 men and the 100 women, then I think we need to say well done to all the coaches who beat the virus, who beat the lockdown and made plans, because coaches are very creative people. And I think that it comes into this whole Olympics showing that these fantastic results, and we've never seen this before, coaches have made a plan. And I think that is a fantastic news as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so can someone tell me why all 3 finals, the 100 meter, 110 meter men's, and the 400 meter finals are all in the morning session? Shouldn't they be in the evening sessions? Is there a reason?
I agree. That's very strange, and that's also extremely hot time of the day. Later in the evenings, it's a little bit cooler, and it also makes, with a time difference, very difficult. Yeah. So I'm very sorry about that. I mean, the semifinals were fantastic times, but why are the finals not at that time?
Alan Ritzdorff, your comments on that.
Yep, it was for timetable and to charge extra prices for the morning session for tickets. So if you're charging extra money for the tickets because the finals are on, that's extra income. Ironically, there's no crowd, so it didn't work out that way. But that's why they did it that way, to distribute the finals so they could get extra money for all sessions.
Yeah.
They must have had Scotsmen looking after the programme.
Well, they did ask me, Frank, and that's what I said to them.
Has a question or a comment on that, Christine? Unmute.
Can I just say that I think what is because we've been talking about this, having lots of discussions in the UK about why people are performing better, and what we've got to look at, that basically a year's break from any high performance competitions. I know we had something towards August and the beginning of September last year, but everybody's had time to readjust, to hone their bodies. Like if you see Dina did about, I think, 3 competitions at her home track, but all she was doing was building her body, making sure that the ligaments, tendons, everything was in place for this year. So I think the reason why we're seeing the performances is, one, they haven't battered their bodies last year. And secondly, you've been able to do the things that you would probably neglect, all the important little foot exercises and the weights, strengthening the plyometrics. They've been able to do that. And so therefore you will have that big improvement. So I'm actually not shocked. I know that not everybody's had the same advantages during lockdown, but I think that's the reason, one of the reasons why we've had these improvements. So for me, it's not surprising because we've had these discussions, and I've seen some of my athletes really put down some really amazing times. But it is because they haven't had to work so hard last year, and they've had time to build for this, and everything's gone into this. All their efforts, all their energies has gone into this Olympic Games, and the fact that it actually happened is an incredible feat in itself. So that's why I think, anyway.
Yeah, back to you, Alan. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. In addition to that, also just the sheer central nervous tiredness of not traveling, not going to country, time zone. So you're getting your rest and recovery in all the time. So I think that's made a big difference rather than picking up injuries. It's the central nervous system's been rested.
Yeah, good point. Michael Bennett, you had a comment on that?
Yes, I do have one comment. I mean, one of the things too, I mean, you do have a lot of athletes that did have challenges this year, but last year, but the athletes that did have opportunity or that were training, they have been able to, as Christine was saying, they've been able to focus their energy not on competing, but on training, on joint conditioning, on building the speed development, building technique, where they're not being split to trying to train and also compete. Or even when you're in season training, you're trying to still improve your performance while you are actually trying to compete to make money. So that does have some advantages for some of the athletes that have done pretty well this year.
That definitely makes sense. Anybody else want to chime in on this whole scheduling, or should we?
If I can just say that I agree totally with Christine, and I think that a lot of coaches, as I've said, being very creative in deciding, look, these are weak points, we've never had an opportunity, the traveling decreases. But I also think that this is maybe a permanent change that's coming up, because as we know, I don't think people say that we have a lot of vaccines and life is going to be normal next year. I don't think it's going to be normal. I think if we listen to a lot of scientists, and it's not the place now to talk about the virus, but if we listen to scientists, and it's not the end, it's the beginning. And we have to change, and things are going to change, and traveling is going to be less. So I think that, as Christina said, people can now focus on strengthening, making the core better, making the whole body react better, improving the nervous system, recovering, eating your own food, sleeping in your own bed. That all helps to have a better mindset, and in the end then having better performances. But we know that we need competition, and that's what athletics is, and we need the money, we need the agents.
Yeah.
So it's going to become a fine balance in how we're going to handle this in future.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great what you're saying, but it's really funny. I've been part of the sport when, you know, every 4 years was the World Championships, then it's gone to every 2 years. And I think we have grown. It hasn't stopped Usain Bolt from competing on that level. But I think the pressures is that athletes are too successful before they've even hit the times or the distances. And I think it's that discipline that you have to learn as you're going along. So, you know, it's hard to change it because we know through TV, they want to change it. They want to change a program because to try and change it and make it look sex, what they keep saying in that sense. So it's really down to the coach and how well you know yourself and how you train through certain competitions, and you still can perform well. And if you look at the performances, let's say from the likes of when Linford Christie was competing to the schedule then, and what time he won, look at the level was the times what they're running. certain events have moved on, you know? So it's just knowing where to go, like altitude training. You know, a lot of people know where to go if it's up in Kenya or going to Ethiopia in Untitled, where all they run to stay there for 3 months, that the red blood cell kicks in. So it's like you're saying, you're a professional, is how you recover in your recovering, your recovery workout that helps you. And really, you have to be more professional. You have to be a nun or a monk, and you have to get spiritual on that level, in that way to take it. And, you know, there's no point, an athlete is me. I wouldn't really think of that. I leave that down to the coaches and get it ready, because I just want to go out there. Wherever the Olympics is, or, you know, whatever time it is, I'm there to compete. I'm not going to worry about that, because then your mind is not in the right place. Your mind. So I don't even worry about it. As long as that everybody else is going through, you know, the same, you know, competition or the same, you know, schedule as me, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah, excellent point. I'll let Frank speak, and then Gunter can speak after that. Frank?
Okay, to a certain extent, to summarize where we are with this particular part of the conversation, I think we have to accept in life that we as coaches are what I would call change agents. We change people, we change athletes, that's what we're there for. But we quite often forget that we've got to be change agents to ourselves.
Yeah.
And we unfortunately, for the most part, tend to be very conservative as coaches. And I think what we've got to learn to be much better at as coaches are three things. First, can we anticipate change? Now, there's a great Italian general back in the start of last century came out with the line, victory smiles on those who anticipate the changing character of war, not those who wait till it's happened and then try to adapt after. So first of all, do we have the mindset that will anticipate what the world's going to be like? If we don't, then how do we prepare our athletes, folks? If we don't know what excellence will look like in 2024, what are we preparing our athletes for? We have to have a picture of that. So that's the first part of being a change agent. Secondly is, are we adaptable when change is thrust upon us? And I have to say, I share Rita's view on this, and because I've had good conversations with Wolfgang, his view, I congratulate coaches on how well they've managed to adapt to this new climate that we're in, which is, as Rita's well pointed out, that's not going to go away. That's the world we're in now. But that's even more reason why we as coaches must get better at anticipating change and adapting to it. And finally, there's nothing to stop us breaking the mold, creating change. Maybe it's time that we had more meetings together like this, where we're talking about what can we do, not just what can we do better, but what can we do differently to break the mold and create a new world, not just for the athletes, folks, but for ourselves. That's all.
Gunter, you had your hand up. Anything to say about that?
I want to refer to Dalton. Dalton, I have to do that. I get paid for it.
Yeah.
I want to remind you that there's a new kit on the block, which is called Uganda. We will open our high altitude training center in January. And you can see already the results in the world records and in the results we are producing here. But coming back to the impact of COVID, I was actually looking backward, please, that COVID has obliged our coach, who comes from Holland, who had before a working, who had a working habit. He would come to Uganda, work with the assistant coaches, but then go back to Holland. So suddenly he found himself in the country with the airport locked, and he was in the country and there was no way out. But looking back, looking at the results he produced, being now permanently with the athlete for almost the whole year, he has agreed himself, I didn't agree, and he agreed himself that this is the better way of working, being permanent with the team in the high altitude training center. So we are thankfully to COVID that it caused that the airport was closed and he was obliged to stay with the team for the longest time he has ever been with them. and the results are accordingly. The other point, I believe also that we have a tendency, at least in the distance and in the middle distance, that we compete in too many competitions. We cannot put the blame on the managers who make their money by competition and getting their percentage. We also have managers who are not exploiting our athletes, but in general, the trend is that we compete too many. And we will not go into physiology, but in middle distance, long distance, every competition is a reduction of your aerobic base. So this is the reason why we have to taper and why the performance level is limited in duration. And I found it quite positive that we have less competition, means our aerobic base to be built up was higher than never before. And then we just used the 2, 3, 4 competition necessary and performed on top level. So for middle distance, long distance, I have the opinion that the reduction of competition has proven that we have been competing too much in the past and that we have better performance. Less can be more.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot one event, which is ironic, which is the men's 400 meters first round. It was really early in the morning. BBC did not cover it, so it was on Eurosport or Discovery Plus. Maybe Christine, the sprint coach, maybe your thoughts on the men's 400 early this morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, UK time. Any thoughts?
I'll be honest with you, I wasn't up. I had been, so I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so sorry.
No problem. There was nothing other than Randolph Ross of the USA didn't advance. Other than that, there was really no casualties. Anybody else watch the men's 400? Peter, Frank watches everything. Frank?
I think I would maybe like to comment on Wade van Niekerk being a South African and all the problems he had 5 years ago, is that I think some of the heats were very fast, and it was apparently 40 degrees Celsius, which was very, very hot at that time of the day. And some of the guys came through very strong, 43, 44, lots of 44s, very low 44s. So that's very fast for heat. And it's quite interestingly that people with a 45, 1 or 2 could go through to the semi-final. But there again, obviously it's the lanes and what you are going to get. So it was a tough race in the heat. As far as Wade is concerned, he came third in his heat, but it was a very fast heat. He ran a 44.3, I think. And he paced himself. So for me, haven't seen him running for a long time. That is, hope, good news. Because he didn't go out flat out. He didn't want to prove anything, run his fastest. I mean, when he ran in Rio, the world record, he ran in lane 8. So I don't think the lanes and the inside lane worries him that much. I think for him it's just to test his strength to see how he goes through. I must say there are a lot of strong people in that 400. And I think it's going to be very similar to the 100-meter final, where maybe some people that we don't expect is going to come through and really make it. I hope Wade made it, obviously, being a South African as well, and he's a fantastic athlete. But we'll have to see what happens in the semis. Maybe we're a little bit closer to an answer after the semis. My piece on that.
Yeah, in the old days, you had 4 races on 4 consecutive days of Michael Johnson. Ironically, we actually have 2 rest days for the men's semi and the final. So I think that's going to work to the advantage of Wade and other athletes. It'd be like another Diamond League meet where you just show up after 2 days, fresh legs. Frank?
Yeah, I think Jimson, good points. There were 5 guys ran under 45 this morning out of the whole field. Wade's time was actually 45:25. I have to say, it's one of the first times I've ever looked at a first round and thought I've learned nothing here. I could see nothing. There were one of the guys who I think is his favorite to win is Norman. He ran 45:35. He just cruised around and he showed nothing. So I think you're right, Rita. The first time we'll have any indication at all is going to be the semi-finals. And then you may be right. I think if I'd had anything to do with Wade at this point, I'd be suggesting that he paced himself and then let it rip once and for all in the final. But I didn't get a sense of the way he was running if he had anything to rip. But we'll see. I'd love him to see it. You know, for Ans, for South Africa, for Wade, I'd love to see it. But I didn't get that feeling from the run this morning. But as I said, I don't know what we could have learned from this morning. But I'm glad you picked it up, Jimson, because it was a neglected event today.
No, definitely. It's 400 meters. So obviously I follow that close to my heart. Gunter, you had your hand up on that? Comments?
Concerning neglected events, there was also the 3,000 meter steeple women. And I'm 100% conform with Rita. It was really, really hot yesterday morning. So maybe that the reason that the increasing heat was also influencing the time. So it was interesting to see the first race 9:10, second 9:19, and the third last one, where normally when you know what the others have performed, you would go at least to be qualified by time, came in 9:23. So all the races in common were really looking for being 1, 2, 3 qualified by position. And I thought in overall it was bad placement for the 3,000 meter to put them in the morning in that expected heat. I would have loved to see them somewhere else. This was unnecessary suffering, because in the meantime, also our female athletes, they don't take a refresher bath in the water jump. We had, and I'm happy on this, we had for the very first time an athlete who cleared all the 7 water barrier. So my request would be in future when we plan the 3,000 and we know it will be hot, that we give the athletes a better condition and environment to perform.
Jimson, can I just ask a question now? If you think it's inappropriate to deal with it now, let's deal with it later in the week. But it was mentioned a little bit earlier, and we've got Herbert Signon on the panel list here. One of the things I think that is disturbing a lot of coaches in the field events is the world ranking system as a basis for selection. And I wondered if anybody has got any views on that. If Jimson, it's your call if you want to discuss it now.
Anybody, I think I covered all the events. We still have 20 minutes left. Let's talk about world record, the world rankings and the qualification period and process. Anybody can chime in. It's not reserved to these 9 panelists. Herbert, is he on the line?
Sorry guys, I have a comment. It's definitely hurting the combine events big time. That system is totally unfair. I know it's based on golf and tennis concept, which is different. And basically athletes in northern part of the world, like Canada or wherever, we can't get to Europe. We can afford to spend this summer. Only one athlete I know that spent 3 months in Europe and lived there in order to make the team. Those with money, like our girl who moved to China, in last minute flew to Estonia for a bogus week to get the points to move to spots up. That's not available for everybody. It's very, the combine events hurting the most, but probably others too. There is some merits to it. I'm not saying it's completely should be eliminated, but it's not helping the combine events in general to have there will be people on the field there that shouldn't be there. There will be some left at home.
Yeah. Herbert, do you want to chime in on that?
Yes, I have the same opinion on that. We've had some colleagues mentioning the fact that the COVID may have had a positive impact on a more calm preparation for the best athletes. Maybe for the first half of the ranking list, or maybe the 2/3 of the ranking list. Those from the second, third, till the end of the ranking list had a very hard time getting their points and being sure that they're selected in the end. And so I think their preparation has been really disturbed, and they had really problems to get to their normal performance level. And we will try to evaluate that after the Olympic Games for the technical events, and maybe there is a lot of evidence to that. But the craziest problems arose in the combined events, because some athletes really tried to gather some point somewhere and traveled all across Europe, as I have seen, which is the worst thing you can do in preparing for the Olympic Games. So I think there may be some positive sides for the world athletics to introduce the system. But as much as I can see is that the top athletes are really taking advantage of it, and the athletes coming close to the number of athletes that are being selected in the end, they will have to struggle until they can be sure to be selected. Oh.
No, good point. Peter Eriksson, you had your hand up. What's your comments on the world rankings?
Well, I think that the point score system is undermining the nation's ability to select a team, and so is also the invitational. Because if you have a standard and you have a selection event, you as a nation select the participant, but as it is right now, it's being forced upon you. And if you don't accept the invitations, then you get hanged out in the media. And I think it was a perfect example was a race walker in the UK, where he didn't meet the internal standard but got an invitation and so on. So I think this needs to stop, because otherwise we're leaving this in the hands of the World Athletics to select the nation's team, and I don't think that's fair.
No, definitely agree with you. Terry Finisteri, you had your hand up. Comments on the world rankings? You have to unmute yourself first. No, Terry, you have your hand up. Okay, if not, how about Michael Bennett? Michael, you had your hand up on that?
Yeah, so there's one thing that I will mention related to the world rankings. And overall, the international rankings, I think they work well for the athletes that are really towards the top of the list, but for the athletes that either are newly professional or near elite, you're going to have a lot of athletes trying to run themselves onto the list or run themselves into a spot. For the United States, it's not a major issue here, because for an event like the Olympics or the World Championships, you have a trials, but even then you do have some athletes here that may not make the top three, or may actually qualify in top three for trials, but they don't have the either point score or the world rankings for some of the events. So they're going to take in another person that has a higher ranking, world ranking. So there's a challenge where you have athletes that are trying to run themselves into a world ranking, and they end up running themselves possibly into a world ranking, but their performances later on in the year, especially for major championships like the World Championship or the Olympics, really can suffer. Then you have an athlete that ended up performing well when it really matters.
Yeah, good matter.
We have a hand up. Danny Cornelius, you had your hand up? Comments?
I was involved in stats, and I spoke to the guys from the World Athletics Stats quite regularly when they developed this. But I think the whole concept of this was, and that's what also I found in South Africa as well, is that many of the events, they don't follow the rules strictly according to the guidelines and the World Athletics rules that they are, and they fabricate jumps. Even in my own country, last year I had to reject a few results where results was fabricated. Where a guy, just to give you an indication, a javelin thrower threw a distance, and then they decided to measure it with and let's say he threw 85 meters. And then when they measured it with a steel measuring tape, the distance was all of a sudden 87 meters. And I mean, a 2 meter discrepancy between a regular tape and a steel measuring tape, it's not possible. I think the whole idea of them is that they want to have events taking place and athletes qualify that are really good athletes, and they qualify because they did do the performance, and the performance was not fabricated. But unfortunately, you never get away with that. And I think they still need to fine tune the system. But the sad thing is there are people that will do anything to go to the Olympic Games and to send people there, or to any top event for that matter, especially when the World Athletics pay for it, like the World Championships, if they qualify, and it might not be a bona fide attempt. That's just my 5 pennies of this whole matter.
Great. Any other questions? I know we've sort of we've gone through all the events. We've had all the panelists. Any questions for any of the panelists on any of the events? Frank again. Frank.
Okay, yeah, we're all about balance, we coaches, and in what we emphasize, what we don't emphasize, and so on. And really, this is kind of more towards to Peter Stanley on triple jump. The picture I had of triple jump has always been the same thing. On the one hand, we need horizontal speed. We had somehow or other to maintain that. Or velocity, but equally we need to cover in 3 phases some distance. Now, the moment you emphasize the distance, you compromise the speed. The moment you emphasize the speed, you might compromise the distance. It seemed to me, Peter, that when you were developing Jonathan, you managed to harness both of these things. And I wondered, the same thing ran through my mind when I was watching our new world record holder in the women this morning. Tell me, and this is my ignorance now because I've never coached triple jump in my life. How do you establish the balance? What are you looking for?
Yeah, Frank and everybody, it's an individual thing. It all comes down to the individual. I coached a guy called Jadel Gregorio, who holds the Brazilian indoor and outdoor records. And when our first conversation, before I started to coach him, he actually told me he wanted to jump like Jonathan Edwards. Now, Jonathan was 74, 75K. Jadel was 106 when I met him. Jonathan was 5'11" and a little bit. Jadel was 6'8". They're totally different people. Totally different individuals. So the thing that actually made me realize with Jadel that he did have speed was I was standing beside him one day and just marking out part of the runway, and he ran past me doing a warm-up, and I felt the wind shift around me. So the guy could move. And I suppose if you've got your own philosophy, it's all about speed. To me, it's speed of movement. You're dead right. It's a balance, but it's the balance of the individual. So everybody comes differently. God's made us all differently, and you just observe and work from there. I was lucky enough to be mentored by Carl Johnson, a super coach, and he sort of told me to just coach every athlete as an individual. So you might have a philosophy and you might have a thought process, but they all come with different balances and imbalances.
Good.
Yeah,
so
that's what, Frank, because that's what I say. For me, it's amazing what you've done with Jonathan Edwards. I mean, I come from the same generation of Jonathan Edwards. We was in the same junior team together. Jonathan Edwards couldn't even get into our junior team. So it's amazing. And he came alive at the age of 25. And that's what it was. But one thing about Jonathan, he was very determined and competitive. And sometimes if you put the right training program, some people are slow developers. So you can't really base off anyone else, because is it mobility? Is it technical awareness? You know, there's so much elements. So the training program should really tell you the weaknesses, and you have to balance it. It's really about the holistic approach. It's your country, is your, you know, the way you were brought up by your parents. How do you take in information? These are all the challenges that a coach should have. And sometimes people always see, it's easy to see a problem, but to correct it is another thing, you know? So I commend Jonathan, you know, because we had the likes of Colin Jackson, who was doing well from a boy all the way, John Ridgen, who did really well as a junior, and injury stopped him. So that's what you have to learn, because a lot of people, sometimes youngsters, improve very fast as a junior, you know, and the improvement after is a micro improvement. And that's a skill over years. I mean, we had Steve Smith in the high jump who jumped 237 at 19. And then, you know, how much more did he improve over his career? So, you know, the way he was improving, his thought process probably thinking that he's going to end up jumping 250. So it's about the coach and really, you know, the experience and keeping your feet on the ground and let that athlete be at peace. And, you know, sometimes when they want more, you have to look at different areas of his speed you're improving, of his distance. And sometimes you improve in these areas, but you do not improve in your performance.
Yeah,
so you have to have a lot of patience.
Yeah. Yeah, at this level, Dalton, I mean, every improvement is micro, right? Like it's like going to the deli and slicing the bologna really thin at this level. So just quick, we have like 8 minutes left. I know Alan had his hand up for a while. Alan, you had a question.
Just a quick one. You can share it for next week if you want, but I won't be on again until Thursday because of work. The Jamaican 4x1 female relay team, do you think they get along enough to actually practice? Or do you think they're just going to show up on the day? Or do you think they've been lucky with the rule change a couple of years ago? You've now got the acceleration zone as part of the changeover zone, so it shouldn't matter all that much. Frank, I see you smirking there. You can answer.
I can't give the answer, but the body language between the gold and silver medal there was pretty emphatic. I'm involved a lot in rugby at the moment. I work with Eddie Jones as a strategic consultant for England Rugby, and when you bring a team together, I think the key thing to have people understand is you don't have to love each other, but just respect each other, and we'll get on okay. And I think the perception at the moment is these girls definitely don't love each other. But I hope they respect the colours that they're wearing enough to make sure that they work together and produce the gold medal they're worth.
That was the question. Do you think that is going to happen, or?
I think it's all business. I think no matter, like, you know, I have a day job as well, and I don't like some of my, you know, fellow colleagues. But, so it's all at this level. It's all business. But that's my. Yeah. I'm not there. I'm here. We got like 5 minutes left. Michael has one last question. If you can keep it short, it'd be great before we close off.
Yeah. So I'll come on to two things. So the one thing that also mentioned related to the overall performance improvements, we have to really think about exercise science and also biomechanics and remember the physics. Coaching art is a big thing, but we also have to remember the science. And that's going to dictate a lot of the performance. When you go through an analyze technique and analyze the overall performance, go back to the physics and go back to the actual science to really be able to plan out some of the performance. Then also, I will mention one thing about the relays. A lot of these athletes, they have done very well individually, but some of these countries have recently started actually doing relay camps, and then they start doing races where they're able to practice simulated relays at some of the different area meet. So I'm sure Jamaica has done that. I'm sure they'll be fine.
Okay, right, good point. So Frank, I think we're out of time. Frank, some closing thoughts before we thank everybody here who made time and effort to join.
Okay, well, first of all, Jameson, thanks again for you've hosted, you've conducted this like a symphony orchestra tonight. So fantastic. And I hope everybody's going to speak to the pals out there and get them to join in, get more friends to join in. Just to come back to your point, Michael, of course, we understand that coaching is both a science and an art. And the other way I like to see it is it's a technical business and it's a people business. Right. In my experience now, working with coaches like yourself from around the world, not too many coaches are short on the technical business. Not too many, okay? But could they be better? Of course. But where the biggest shortage is in the people business. And I think the people skills are something that coaches have to be on top of Otherwise, it doesn't matter how much you know about the technical, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So just to finish off here, thanks very much indeed, James. Congratulations to the panelists, and thank you all for being on here. Just one quick personal word to somebody who's out there who have spotted 2 nights in the row. Malcolm Kumba, really good to see you, mate, across there in the States. I heard you've not been too well for a while. I hope you're getting back to 100%. Really good you're joining us. And it's great to know that a coach's passion for coaching never dies. Over to you, James.
Okay, so thank you, Frank. So just reminder, again, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. UK time, 7 p.m. Europe time, same link, same time tomorrow. If we're on again, please join, share with your friends, other coaches. So I want to thank all the panelists tonight. I know it was, thank Giacomo and Frank to organize. We got Christine, we got, Gunter, Rita, Dalton, Danny. We got both Peter Erickson and Peter Stanley, as well as Wolfgang as well. It was great to have everyone here on board tonight. What a day at track and field it was. I really hope you all join again tomorrow, same link. And that's it. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Great job.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.